Good afternoon, everyone. It is Wednesday, December 8th, 2021 at 3 o'clock p.m. And that means it's time for Women in Business. And I did not get mesmerized by the little swirly thing today, which I'm very proud of myself for, but I am kind of dissatisfied with my lipstick. I understand if you're listening to the podcast version of this, you're not going to see my lipstick, but I'm not sure it works. So I've been obsessing about that for like the past 45 minutes, which is crazy. But anyway, that is not the point of any of this. That's just to say, yes, I'm crazy sometimes. The point of this is to talk to Kate Plummer, and I am so excited that she is here. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about her, and then I'll bring her on, and we will be off to the races. This is going to be really fun. Kate Plummer is the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Clearmount. While it was never her intention to go into the family business, Kate joined Clearmount over 12 years ago and has since carved a unique position in her business and in the industry as a thought leader and voice of conscientious creativity. That's a little harder to say than you would think. As vice chair of the industry's only peer-led nonprofit dedicated to industry education, Kate is passionate about growth and challenging our industry to strive for greater progress in creativity and collaboration. What she loves most about the business is interacting with interesting and diverse clients, designing beautiful pieces, and working together with distributor partners to build innovative awards and recognition programs. That is a heck of a bio right there. And I'm going to turn this off real quick and then pop Kate in here. That's a heck of a bio, Kate.
I wrote mine, and it is one of those things whenever you write a bio, you're just like, oh my God, how do I sound normal? How do I sound not braggy when a bio is your bragging point?
Right.
And Bobby Lee, who of Common Skew, he's like, I'm just gonna punch it up. And I was like, okay, yes. And he wrote that, and I was like, oh, she sounds amazing. Oh,
she's wonderful. I'd hire her.
Person.
One of the things that I always laugh about is you can tell the people who do a lot of this sort of thing because their bios are always in the third person. And people who don't write bios very often, they write in the first person, and then I have to translate it while I'm introducing them. Which always makes me laugh because it's just a little quirk of the thing that when you're talking about someone, you don't say I did, you say she did and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway.
And it's so weird, but we're going to start with this tip. If you don't have a headshot and a bio written right now, put this on your to-do list and get one written. Because when you're under the gun to get one done, you will be dumb as hell. You won't be able to think of it. You'll just be like, what have I accomplished with my life? So write it when you're not kind of being like, hey, can you get me a bio real fast?
That's a good tip. And the other tip is if you are writing your bio, please write it in the third person because it makes it so much easier for the person who has to introduce you if they don't have to translate all the pronouns as they're reading.
Yeah.
But so here, bonus tip already, and we haven't even started yet. But I really do have a lot I want to talk to you about. I told you when we were talking about this before we started that I've been cyber stalking you for the past couple days. Not in a creepy way. There's no shrine in my basement or anything, but in just trying to learn more about you. And you covered a lot of the hot button points that are things that I talk about. So I'm loving that we get to talk about this today. First one that I want to bring up is something that I am struggling with right now. So I'm just adore that this is a topic we can talk about, which is promoting yourself. And you told a story, I don't remember the specific podcast, but you told a story about asking a friend to nominate you for an award. And you were so just like, I wanted it. And I said, I want this person to nominate me and I want this award. And I was like, you go, girl. I want to be like that.
Usually I get comments about the ego I have, so that's really nice to hear.
No, I think we need more of that because I didn't take it as ego. I took it as you respected your talents and you knew that you were qualified and worthy of getting the award and you weren't shy about that. And I think that is something a lot more women could stand to learn how to do. So how did you learn that? That I guess where did that come from? Is that something your parents raised you to be or?
Yeah. Well, my mom she instilled so much confidence in all of us. So, and then I think I come by it quite honestly in that I have a twin sister, so we always joke that I'm winning, like I'm setting goalposts and passing them, and she's like, we're not even doing the same thing, like we're not playing the same game. Stop using this as a comparison. I was like, well, that's what a loser would say. So, so she hates that. But it's just one of those. I think it's one of those, we need to recognize ourselves more. Like a lot of us really look for external recognition. And I think if you are constantly looking for that, when you don't get it, it's like that hits a little harder than if you had just kind of asked for something. And so I just kind of believe that you should be the one sort of setting yourself up for things. Like you should ask for that promotion. You should ask for that raise, because, you're not always going to have someone behind you being like, you should go for that. Like if you've got amazing friends, those friends will be those people for you. But I think unless you can rely on yourself to propel yourself forward, it's perfect. And so the podcast you were talking about was Kirby Hasman delivering marketing.
Yes.
And it was the Rising Star Award, which I loved getting. And it was one of those, like, I was like, someone told me, I was like, you're already a risen star. And I was like, yeah, but
I don't have the official award yet.
Yeah, but I'd like one of those, please. And so for me, it was like a milestone there. But the other side of it is I work in the award business. And so I have all these stats about why awards work. And it's all this amazing. So like my favorite fact about awards is that 60% of people will prefer physical recognition item over monetary recognition. And the way I kind of described that to people was, okay, when was the last time you got an award? And did you brag about it on LinkedIn? Did you tell your family and friends? Did you go, guess what I won? Compared to when was the last time you got a bonus? Did you brag about it on LinkedIn? Did you tell your family friends, guess what I got? Like, you don't do that. Like money is kind of this like something. But when you win an award, you kind of, there's that internal and external recognition that people really want to have. And it's that, like, you can brag about it, and it adds to your brand, it adds to who you are. It's all these sort of recognition points. And I think it is just one of those, like, if you're not going to do it for yourself, then why should someone else do it for you? And the other thing is, like,
get me right.
But also, like, I think you should also be thinking, if I want this for myself, is there someone else out there who could also use the recognition or deserves the recognition? Because you should always be like shouting people up, like sort of being like, you did great. Like, I see what you're doing. Like, my favorite people in the world are the quiet ones, because they're always the ones who like are watching more, hearing more, seeing more. And and they don't get the recognition for it, because the loudmouths like me usually get it. So.
Well, I'm laughing at this because I recently had a couple of experiences that made me think of what you were talking about in the podcast, which is I'm a great promoter of everybody else. Kathy Chang does her Woman of the Week thing with Redwood Classics. Don't know if you've seen that. I nominated 8 other people for it. And she wrote me back and she said, that's great, but we'd like you to do it. And I was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, me?
Oh, I could do it. Sure. And then the Reggie Awards are actually, I think they'll be awarded this Friday from 2 regular guys. And I got nominated for one of those. And the trade show that I rep or do the marketing for also got nominated. So I completely talked up the trade show. And one of my friends came on the post and said, and also Christine's nominated for an award. You should vote for her too.
Yeah. Well, because you don't always see the true value in what you do. Like, you don't always see, like, you can see in an event or something like that, you can see the ripples of that event. But when it's your actions, like, it feels really weird to be like, hey, look over there. You see that there? I did that. That's me.
Yeah,
like,
that's me.
That's harder for someone to do. So I think it is like, and like, you have to be able to promote yourself. And it also ties into like people having a personal brand. Like, that's also really important for your career now. Like, a lot of people will move around, or, they won't stay in the same industry, or they do stay in the same industry, and you kind of want to build yourself up. So it's one of those, like, when you put on your resume, like, what are your sales numbers? Like, you always want to put something that's measured. Well, this is a really good measuring point to sort of say, this is a milestone that I wanted and I achieved.
I agree. And I think it also, especially for people like me or people that own their own businesses or whatever. I mean, like me, my brand is all there is. That's all I'm selling. I don't have physical products or anything. I have that. So awards are something I can put in my bio. Awards are something I can put on my resume. You're right. If I make, $1 million, that's probably not going on I mean, it'd be awesome, but it's not going on my
$1 million
resume.
salesperson, that goes on your resume.
Well, yeah, I suppose that would be true. But I guess the reason that I wanted to talk about this is because it's something that I talk to women about a lot. And I'm trying to parse out why it's such a hard thing for a lot of women. Why they make the choices I make, where they'll talk about everything else and promote other people and never promote themselves. So I really have to ask, because I was brought up, and I understand completely that I'm probably considerably older than you, but I was brought up with the idea that you don't promote yourself, that people don't like women who brag. They don't like women who seem full of their own exploits, or whatever you want to call it. And that kind of has always stuck with me, that I'm supposed to wait for somebody else to point out that, oh, she did a good job. Instead of, did your parents, I mean, I know from the podcast that your mother was a huge influence in your life. The way that you and other people talk about her, it sounds like she was absolutely amazing. But did your parents raise you to be more self-promoting, or what did they tell you? Or did they tell you anything?
Well, my mom was a big person for standing up for yourself. Like, it was one of those, like, she hated bullies, hated them, like, and would work as hard as hell to, like, just take them down if she thought she could. And that kind of stuck with me. Like, I don't deal well with people who kind of bulldoze over people, even though I know myself I can do that. Self-awareness is the first step. But I think, as well, is like, there's so many cultural and societal things where we're told, like, don't brag because then you're bossy. And, instead of being authoritative, we're aggressive. Like, there's a lot of words that get coded for women.
Yes.
And, like, it is one of those, like, you can know that, but it still kind of hits you hard. Like, I got called aggressive a couple weeks ago, and I was just like, and what? Like, my first reaction was just like, yeah, okay, if you want me to be that, I can be that. Because I don't like, where does this stand? And it's sort of like, if a guy was in the same mode, would you have used those same words? Like, would that position have been the same? So I'm always very conscious that way of, like, are you saying this because it's me, or are you saying this because it's legitimate? Fine, it's legitimate, we're cool. And, that's a personal check on this. But at the same time, it's sort of kind of goes into, the more you're aware of what's being told to you, the more you can sort of change it. So, like, unconscious bias, like, that's so deep rooted in a lot of what we do. Like, for a while there, I was very shy, I didn't brag, and I think it just literally became this thing where it's like, no, my thoughts matter, my voice matters. I can see change happening when I do something. And I think, some people may not feel that way or may not see it, but it's there. Like, you can do good, and you don't have to be loud to do good, but I think you should always be aware that you're not existing in a bubble. I think of the past year and a half, if anything that we've learned is that we all live in very large bubbles, and so it is one of those things of, like, I can't say my mom was like, you have to be more self-confident, you have to be this, but she set a really good role model of, like, you stand up to bullies, you stand up to injustices. If you want something, you go after it, and you shouldn't wait for someone to bring it for you. And she'd always give me, like, crap, because she would just sort of be like, you're smart and you should work harder. Like, you shouldn't get by having things easy for you. And I'm like, yeah, but it's easy for me. It's like, okay, but it's, it's not easy for someone else. And so if you can work hard and make someone else's life easier, then you need to do that. And so it's a mixture. I'd love to say it's like one thing that changed everything, but I also went to an all-girls school. I'm very, so it was kind of like drilled in you, like, this route isn't your route. You can do whatever you want.
Right.
And then when I got in the industry, my mom, again, was very much of, okay, like you're going to get involved and I'm going to introduce you to very strong women that you can start going and following. And so she started taking me to WLC, which is PPAI's Women's Leadership Conference.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that's just an event with your friends. And then instantly loved it and became more involved in it and was like co-chair for a while. And then she also got me involved in WE, which is Women's Empowerment Event up here for PPBC, because we love our acronyms of for the Canadian promotional products. And that one I've been one of the co-chairs for over 10 years. So it's been running for over 10 years.
Wow.
Together. But yeah, it was one of those, like, you can do change, so you do, like, you can do good, so you make it. And my mom was also like a serial volunteer as well. When Hunger Games came out and I volunteer, all my sisters were like, yeah, that's her. That's my mom. And I'm really bad at that too. It's like, I volunteer. It's like, no, you have other things to do.
Yeah, that's on my list too. I think that'll be our next topic, but I want to circle back to one thing that you said, because I think this is why I'm struggling with this so much right now, because I know the importance, and you just pointed it out, of role models of women that you can look to and see how they're doing things. And so I'm talking to all these women in my group on the show to say, you need to promote yourself, you need to do all this stuff, and I'm not walking the walk that I'm telling other people that they need to do. So I think that's kind of why I'm trying to pick your brain on, how did you figure out how to do this? Because
I'd honestly love to say that, don't worry, I've got it. Here it is. I'll send you the link. We're on it.
oh, that'd be awesome.
So not that at all. It's like, I think it's just a large mixture of, just doing it. Like, imposter syndrome is very real here. Like, I still feel like when people do or say adult things, I was like, oh my God, they're so adult. And I'm like, they're 5 years younger than me. Like, you can also do this. And, or, I'll talk to some people and just be like, this is like, oh my God, like a bigwig's paying attention to me. And then someone will come up and be like, I'm so excited to meet you. And I was like, me? It's like, okay,
I know.
Sure.
It's weird.
It is weird, but I kind of love it, because it is something where I've said something and it's clicked for you, and you, like, there's so many things where people have said something and it's been off the cuff, but it's like stuck with them. Like the Kirby podcast that I was on, I said, like, you have to shout yourself out. And a friend of mine is like, she's like, I think of that all the time. And I was like, I don't remember saying that, but yeah, I totally believe it. I think of it. But it is, I mean, the more you go out and model yourself, like, no one's going to follow your route exactly, but you've told someone, like, someone's here and you can also go harder, faster, stronger. Like, I don't think there's an easy answer, but I think it's more of like constantly challenging yourself is kind of the route, instead of kind of going, oh, like, they're so brave. It's like, no, they're probably so scared. Like, I always tell people, like, if you get me 5 minutes before I go and public speak and say the car is running, go to the front door, I will go to the front door. I will get in the car. We will leave. I won't present. And then afterwards, I'm like, oh, adrenaline rush. I nailed this. I'm so awesome. And it's like, yeah, but like 15 minutes earlier, you thought you'd just exit and just ditch this whole thing. And so, don't think that everyone all has everything together, because it's not the case. Like,
no, it's not. And I have to laugh, because I have every show that I've done for this show, I have a moment somewhere 2 or 3 hours before the show where I go, maybe I shouldn't do it. I don't know. Maybe nobody cares. Maybe if I don't do it, nobody's going to notice.
Maybe she'll change her mind and not really want it on me on.
Yeah, nobody's, and what I found out is that people do notice, number one, which is very gratifying, but that it's like you said, it's a momentary thing. And I almost think if you don't have those nerves, if you don't have a little bit of that, wow, maybe I bit off more than I can chew this time, you're not going to go out and kill it. If you're just like, blasé about it, if you're just like, yeah, I got it, it's fine.
And at
I'm
that point,
good.
if you reach that point where you're like, this is just second nature, like I
Yeah.
know for myself, the minute I'm like get complacent, the more mistakes I made because I like
Mhm.
get lazy. So I think it's like it sounds so cliche of like you always have to be challenging yourself, like, take risks and all that stuff. But it's like it is kind of the thing. It's like at least once a month you should do something where you're like, this is a bad idea. Maybe I shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
Because afterwards you're
Well,
gonna be like,
or once a month, you should do something where you go, I have to go to the bathroom 5 times before I do this because I'm so nervous. But then you get out there and you go, and it's great. But I do agree. And I think the other thing we all need to remember too is that what you were saying earlier, that the people that you look at and you think these people have it all together and they know what they're doing, they don't have any more clue than you do. They're just making it up as they go along.
yeah. Oh, there's so many people I know that just look good on paper. And
Yeah.
but like the thing is they didn't get there because they aren't hard workers or they're not like
Right.
smart people but don't think that what they have isn't accomplishable for yourself because it
Right.
is. Like I think that's the thing as well is like constantly challenge yourself to be like, yeah, I can totally do that. Like I'm good at this. And find the awards that tell other people that you're also good at it.
And then just work through that's what I'm realizing is I just need to walk through I shouldn't really do this. I shouldn't, and go, you know what? I was going to say a naughty word, but I didn't. Um, this is something that I have to frequently censor in my head, and sometimes I don't. But um, I just need to go for it, and I just need to own my greatness, I guess. Which I hate the way that sounds, but it's the only way that I can think of to
It
say
sounds like
it.
a Hallmark card. Like it sounds like it. We're just kind of like, I'm going to seize the day, and it's like, yeah,
Well,
but
it
you know what?
sounds like an SNL sketch.
Yeah,
I'm going to get a mirror and start going, and damn it, they like me,
yeah,
and that's
yeah,
not what I'm aiming for. But I think more women could use a dose of that, a dose of, I know what I want and I'm going to do it,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and it is as well as like I think it can get really frustrating for women because there's a lot of workplaces where your voice doesn't get heard as much
Yeah.
or your ideas might get shot down or they just kind of get ignored and that's really hard to constantly get that. And I love this story for Obama's White House. All the top women there kind of found out at the beginning that their ideas were not being heard or they were being talked over, or it would be that typical of like, what if we
Right.
go blue? And then everyone's like, oh, not really sure. And then a guy would go, what if we went blue? Like,
Yeah.
maybe like blue is a great idea, like that kind of stuff. And so all the top women in that position kind of got together and they're like, we need to support each other. So if someone had a good idea, the other women around them would say, that's a great idea, and like reinforce it, like
Right.
constantly, not let it pass by or not let it be this like sort of, okay, yeah, sure, whatever kind of thing. Like they would say, yeah, what about this? And like follow through and do a deep dive.
Mhm.
And they found that their voices were getting heard and they were also getting promoted more. So
Yeah.
I love that because it becomes this whole thing of, again, shout yourself out but also support around you, like
Mm.
that kind of rising tide lifts all boats kind of. Again, we're running into the cliche lines again, but they're cliche for a reason. But it is, just keep promoting and talking about people that way. It's like
I
because you
agree.
can change someone's career or change someone's life just by being that support system at that time or well past that time.
Well, I cannot resist because you left me such a good opening here. Just want to talk about, whoop, that's not the right one. This one, the Women in Garment Decoration Facebook group. If you're not a member, please come join us because part of what we do is shout each other out, support each other, try to form a cohort of people that are amplifying each other's voices because that is so important. And I heard that same story about Obama's White House and I always loved it because I think that's one of the things that I think has done more disservice to women than almost anything is the idea that women need to compete or that women are competitive. And I have to say, most of the women, I have met competitive ones. One of my first bosses was one, and it was horrible. But most of the women who are competent and bright and secure in themselves are not that way. And I think that's an important point.
And I completely agree. Like I'm competitive, but I'm competitive about the stupid stuff, like where you're just like, no, we weren't challenging each other, and then I'm like, but I won. So
Well, it doesn't matter if you were
Yeah.
playing, I won.
Yeah. And like people have used that to their advantage. So I was working at a charity event and they're like, okay, whoever wins, will this is actually my mom who did this to me. She goes, whoever sells the most tickets wins $25. Like nothing. Like not like $25 can be a lot, but it also at the time was like, okay, $25. I didn't need the $25. I sold the most tickets so I could say I won the $25. And then my mom, being my mom, was like, no, we're not giving you $25. That's going to charity. And I was like, I might have donated
You were like, but that's my reward.
That's my win. But the fact of winning was enough for me. So, so if you ever need me to sell event tickets, I'm your gal. And but it is that idea is like competitive people are always like kind of knocked down of like, oh, you're like pushing down as you climb up or you're not looking out for people around you. But it's one of those like you do better when you have a team around you. So your attitude shouldn't be like, well, they got some, so I need to save what I have. It should be like, oh, when we have more, it's better that way. Same thing as like, so my mom was always like, you don't climb a ladder and push down. You climb a ladder and you pull up behind you.
Right.
If they pass you, that's fine. Like, you'll get there, you'll get to a different thing. And I think that's the thing is like everyone thinks because for the longest time there, and sometimes still is, there's just room for one. There can only be one woman. You can only have this. Or
it's like the Highlander.
Yeah. Kind of the same brutalness too.
Yeah.
But it also became like, you'd only fit in with the guys if you were one of the guys. And so that meant that you weren't one of the girls. Like there was, you could be one, but you couldn't be the other. And I see it in an older generation of like with whenever I kind of go, oh, would you like to come to beyond guys being like, when there's going to be a me? It's like, oh, yeah, there is for years now. But there'd be other women being like, oh, I don't do that kumbaya. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear. So
you can say shit. It's fine.
Yeah. Okay. I don't do that kumbaya shit. And it's like, okay, so you've never been to a professional conference if you think that the goal of this is to do kumbaya. Like, great song, but no. And so it would be a lot of like, what you're doing is feminine and coding that as bad versus what you're doing is supporting each other and helping each other in business. And that's good. Like people kind of get stuck on the one or the other instead of seeing, again, we get better when we're supporting instead of being like, oh, I can't give that referral to that person because it means that they might not work with me again. It's like, but would you not work with a vendor who refers someone else to you? It's like it is it's kind of take your blinders off and become a more collaborative community.
And I think that's really important. And I also think the other thing that I've noticed is that and this is gender neutral, but the people who are secure in themselves and what they can do and realize that there's enough for everybody, you don't get the infighting and the cattiness and the stupidity that you get with people who feel like they can't do it or they're not secure in their talents or whatever it is. And it's like, I don't claim to be good at everything, but I know what my strengths are and I'm okay with those.
Yeah. And it is kind of the other thing because there are some people where it's just like they're not collaborative people and that's not a bad thing. Like, but also I would suggest for those people who are like, I'm not into this kumbaya shit. It's like, okay, well, look around and see like, is your network strong enough? Like why? And if it isn't, could this attitude be part of it? Or, are you being asked to different things? Because as much as we don't want it to be a popularity contest, sometimes it can be, or sometimes it can be a case of, are you like, does someone want to work with you? Because that also comes to things like, are you easy to work with? Are you fun to work with? Or are you smart? Because like, you don't have to be fun or likable. You can just be smart.
Well, I think it comes down to I mean, I would put my hand up to say I'm one of those people who's like, I don't love the kumbaya shit. I understand that it works and I believe in supporting and collaborating and all that kind of stuff, but I've never been one of the girls, and I never have particularly wanted to be, in terms and in the historical way that,
And yet you have a women in business. What do you think you are? Wait,
If we could
let's
answer
think
that
on this
question,
one.
I'd never need therapy again.
Yeah. We'll just book one
But
of these once a month.
well, I think what the difference is, I'm 52 and I came up when I was growing up, it was much more women were gossipy and women were, they talked about their kids and their husbands, and there was, like junior league and all that crap. And I never got that. I never had any interest in any of that. I don't want to talk about hairstyles, even though I talked about my lipstick today. So I fully understand that I am not consistent.
Yeah. But okay, so I'm gonna intervene here.
Yes.
Like, I think that's because a lot of times, and I've noticed this with the older generation, but I also notice it with mine, is that you're kind of told you can only be one thing. Like,
Yes.
you can't be into makeup and into sports. Like, you can't
Yes.
be into fashion and be smart. Like, we see it in our pop culture of like, there's the jock. Like, we get codified so fast
Right.
and so easy. And I think what's really interesting right now, what's happening in social media, like social media can basically find your tribe and then sink you right down into it.
Yes.
But it can also like open you up to far more things. And I think it's, people are far more excited. Like, my favorite thing about TikTok is sort of finding people who are truly passionate about really small niche things that you're also passionate about. Like,
Mhm.
it's easier for people to find other people with their interests versus kind of, so it's not becomes this, well, I can't be into that because I'm into this. Like,
Mhm.
it's, you can be into lipstick. You can care what your lipstick looks like. It doesn't take away from your brains, or it doesn't take away from the community that you've built. Like, it sounds like you couldn't find the community where you are, so you just built one yourself. Like, would you not agree? Or
Yeah, I think well, I have to, and again, I'm sorry, this is becoming a therapy session for me, but I have to say I'm 52. I have just become this person that is here talking to you maybe in the past 3 or 4 years. Before that, I was not this person. I didn't have the confidence in myself. I didn't believe that I was worth it. There's a long history that goes into why that is. I'm not going to go into that here, but it took me a long time to evolve to this person. And this person wants to help other people get to this place too. And I think that was the genesis of the original podcast that led to the group. That's the genesis of this. That's the genesis of a lot of the things that I do these days. Because and a lot of it is I didn't have that when I was coming up. And so I want
yeah,
to give that to other people. Does that make sense?
perfect.
So, hello,
It
therapy
still
for
sounds like
Christine.
you've made a community of like-minded people.
Well, and and don't get me wrong, I'm totally proud of that community. I think there are amazing women there that we support each other and we learn from each other. And I'm hugely, hugely grateful for everybody that spends time there, because I have been in communities of women that were not that way. And
Mhm.
it's not a good, not
So
a good,
toxic.
well,
Yeah.
I've worked for companies that were not that way. It's not fun.
Yeah. And it's amazing as well as you don't always notice the toxicity until you're out of it. And then you're like,
Yeah.
what was I doing there? We've had toxic employees before. And it's one of those where I'm like, it's fine, it would be harder without them than, whatever's going here.
Right.
And then in one case it was like, no, it just became a case of like, we have to get this person out. And once they were gone, like it felt like
Yeah.
the air
Huge
was
difference.
breathable again. And so I think a lot of people like, are you in a toxic job? There are a lot of other jobs out there that you can
Yep.
do that you're probably really good at. And I think I think once you've been in that toxic thing, like you become so prepared for someone to be awful for you and to you that it kind of closes you off a little bit. But I think it's one of those, like, the fact that you've built this and that you're aware of it that's a win in itself.
Well, it's one of those things where I always kind of had this little, and I don't know how we started talking about me when I'm supposed to be interviewing you, but since we're here, I'm going to go with it.
Go for
I
it.
always kind of had this little flame inside of me that said, you're worth more than this, and I grew up being told I was basically worth nothing. So, but there was always this little voice that went, there's more to you than what they're telling you there is. It took me a really long time to actually really believe that, but eventually you get there. So
yeah, eventually you do. And I think that goes back into segueing to the first topic of
yes, ma'am.
The negative self-talk that we have, that we can even if you don't, you can constantly reinforce it in yourself. And unfortunately, it can also affect the way you work with people too, is like, sort of, what do you do in this case? So that negative self-talk of like, oh, I wasn't there, I wasn't like this, I wasn't doing that, like, that can be so detrimental to yourself, but also to how people engage with you. And so it just becomes this, okay, it's there, get rid of it. Like, it does you no good. Go get yourself an award. Like, it is like, go talk yourself up, go get talked up by yourself. Like, the same thing of like, Bobby wrote me a bio and I was like, man, that girl is really cool. I'd love to get
She's
to know
pretty
her.
awesome. Well, and I will say this too, and I put this caveat in when I talk about my story a lot. Therapy helps. Talk to people, even if you don't go to a person who's actually a therapist, talk to people who've been in similar situations or who maybe can, talk to me. I'll talk to you,
I'll talk to you.
But it's like all that. Oh, I'm laughing because in the comments here, I have people telling me how great I am and that my lipstick works, which I think is funny. But Eric made a really good comment here. Negative self-talk absolutely plays into questions of value and boundaries in work. And I think that's totally true, which segue myself now because I'm remembering that I'm the interviewer. One of the things, see, this happens when I have a guest that I connect with is I'm like, okay, I'm just going to talk about shit and whatever happens. But
I have a deep dive series. Yeah. I have a deep dive series that I do for Promo Kitchen. And it's mostly 15 minutes. Eric and I usually end up talking anytime he's chosen for that is, okay, so I'm going to book off the next 2 hours and then we'll chat.
Oh, Eric and we had a dinner once that was 5 hours long, 6 hours long. We were at the same trade show and we said, let's go to dinner. And the poor waitress kept coming over and going, do you need anything? Are you good? And we're like, yeah, are we not? And luckily the restaurant wasn't so busy that we were like dominating her table, because then we would have gone somewhere else. But Eric and I could talk for about a year. But to segue back to one of the other things that I wanted to talk to you about, we share a tendency to take charge of things. And this is another thing that I'm trying to find the balance for right now. So like I said, hello to Christine's therapy for the day. But I wanted to talk about it because I've noticed a couple of things about this tendency. Number one, I tend to do it because it really is easier for me to just do it than to deal with the people who aren't doing it either the way I think it should be done, or who aren't doing it fast enough, or who aren't paying attention, or whatever it is. And then the other half of it is, and this may be a question that you don't know the answer to, but I want to put it out there, which is, how do you balance that so you aren't being, I hate taken advantage of. That's not really the phrase that I want to use, but it's the only one that, or how do you balance it so you don't take on so much that you have no life and you're totally overwhelmed?
That's a great question. I'd love the answer for that.
Yeah. And I totally understand that you probably don't have the answer to that either, but I think it's something that's worth asking, because I don't think it's a bad tendency. to be the person who can get stuff done.
Yes, but it's also a bad tendency to be the only person that stuff gets done.
Yes,
Because
yes.
I've seen it in organizations and everything else, is that you have the people who want to be involved and then you have the doers. And what happens is the people who want to be involved just put more and more on the doers until the doers feel overwhelmed, and then it's not the same reason that they joined. Like, it becomes an extra job, or it becomes burnout happens. And burnout is just as much of a risk as just losing an employee. I'm with you on, like, so Johanna Gottlieb, who's my co-chair for Promo Kitchen, I regularly say, I hate that this is a democracy and not a dictatorship. And then she constantly is like, you can't say that. You have to stop saying that. It's like, whatever. It's like, I'm like, but it'd be easier. But it is like, even at work, like, my sister's constantly going, you need to delegate more. Like, this doesn't have to be on your plate. Like, you can hand it over. And I think it goes back into our community conversation of, like, things are better when they're done by a community because you're not burning people out.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like you're getting diverse ideas, you're getting thoughts that you wouldn't have had, you're getting input that you wouldn't have had. And it's sort of, in the long run, it's going to be better. But I'm totally with you when you're just like, but if I could just do it myself, it would be done by now, and we'd have it and it'd be done. And I think that attitude of, like, getting it done versus building a team can be so awful. But it is like, there are so many days where I'm like, if I could just do this. And but I've gotten better at it, of just sort of saying no and putting lines in, like, this is what I do and these are my jobs. Because I think a lot of people aren't very good at saying no because they want to help you out, like, they want to assist. And and I think if you say yes to everything, then your time gets divided to smaller and smaller bits where it's not as beneficial. Like, the best example I heard was someone saying, like, okay, I could volunteer for this organization and I could give them an hour a week every month, or I could do 1 4-hour mentoring session. And what would be better in that case? So I think it goes into, like, what is your time worth? Is there something you need to be doing? Or is there something that you could pull up behind the ladder on you and give to them to help them shine and help showcase their work and their talents? And could you be doing that? It's like, but all of this is so much easier said than done.
Oh, well, and the other thing is also that if you find, I call them the parasite people. If you find a boss or a company owner or a committee chair or whoever who doesn't really appreciate what you do, but is totally willing to let you do it as long as it takes work off them. And I've fallen into that trap a couple of times where I'm like, sure, I'll do it. I'll take care of it. And then I'm efficient and I get it done. But it isn't valued. And I think that's something that you need to watch out for too, is not to be taken. And again, I hate this phrase, but it's the only phrase I can think of. Don't be taken advantage of.
But it is, like, especially in volunteer situations, is that, what is that taking away? Because I've, like, so the conference, the women's empowerment one, is like, that takes over my May. Like, my April and May, it just becomes a gong show. I work really long, but then I have time where it doesn't take over. And so it becomes this thing of, like, but in April and May, it's time away from my partner. It's time away from my family. Like, it's time away from my dog. And, like, he's my favorite thing. And, or it's time away from my business. Like, what suffers because you've given something else? But it also is, like, when you do, like, and I'm making this sound like, just say no. Like, you can learn to say no, but it's also like, learn to know where the best time is spent. Because when you volunteer and when you are active in that volunteer, not just someone who, like, pops in, drops ideas and leaves, like, you get so much more out of it. Like, I would say, like, I've become a smarter person working with Promo Kitchen because there are so many smart people. There's so many amazing thinkers as part of that organization, so many creative people where they just make you see the world a different way. And I love that. And like, I know I've
Mhm.
gotten better at my job, at home, at like work, home, and family. Like, it's all just gotten better because of that. And so I'm not saying like say no to everything, because it's just going to suck you dry. It's like, you know, it kind of goes into whenever I fly somewhere, I will always look for the shortest flight, because I value my time at $100 an hour. And
Mhm.
so if I have a 4-hour layover to save me $200,
Mhm.
have I valued my time properly?
Right.
And so that's how I look at it for everything else, is like, am I contributing? Am I just one of those parasite people because I can't contribute the way I want to? And what am I getting out of this? Like, what is the return to me, without being crass of like, what's the return for me for volunteer hours? Like, you don't want to think that way, but it is kind of.
Well, I think you have to think that way though, because I mean, I recently became a sous chef at Promo Kitchen and I'm very excited about it. And but that was there was a cost benefit analysis there. And a lot of the reasons that you mentioned for why you love that organization was why I thought it was worth me spending the time to be part of it. Other organizations, I might not have made the same calculation. I think you have to, particularly when you're your own business. I
Yeah.
mean, like you said, you value your time at a certain rate. I have to value my time at a certain rate too, because if I don't eat or have a house.
Yeah. You can't give everything away for free. And I think, and
No.
it kind of goes back to Eric's point of like, you have to value boundaries. You have to value,
Yeah.
saying no to things. And just because you think you can contribute, could there be someone else out there who could do a better job than you on that? And it's tough, like saying no, especially if I think we're pretty much the same person here. So
I'm
yeah.
getting the feeling. Yeah. We have the
When
same brain a little bit.
Yeah, because there is that attitude of like, but I could do it better and I could do it faster. It's like, okay, but
Yes.
could you? Like, really? And what's taken away, or or what's gained? Like, I don't think there's a bad thing to be the person that does everything, because it means you're reliable. And especially volunteer organizations really value the doers. Like, if you say you're going to do something and you actually do it, oh my God, you're gold to a volunteer
Oh, yeah.
organization. But I think as well as like, just be aware of like what you're giving in that case. Like, don't give it all away.
Yes.
Like, don't give up too much of yourself that you can't take back. But also learn to
I
say
agree.
no. I think a lot of people, and again, we're circling back to the first point. A lot of people think that if you're a female and like your time should be towards contributions like that, or if you say
Mhm.
no, you're ungrateful or you're not a nice person. And it's like, no, you can say no and respect your boundaries. And I'd love to help in another way, or I can't
Right.
do this, but I contribute this. Like, yeah,
Right. Well, and I think you said something a little earlier that really resonated with me, which is I tend to be one of those people like, I can do this and I can take care of it and it'll be fine. And then I don't have to worry about anybody else. And I just kind of assume that I'm the savior of everything. And not in those words, but and I need to realize that just because somebody doesn't do it the way that I would do it doesn't mean they're doing it wrong or badly.
yeah. Because
You
that's the other
know?
thing. Because you're like, oh, well, maybe if I could just, yeah,
Yeah,
no,
and if
that
you
doesn't help
just
anyone.
let me do this and then, it's an interesting navigation and Eric is just killing it in the comments today. So I'm going to share this one too. It's hard not to become the single point failure if you are a doer. Take on too much, nobody else knows the task or skill, you burn out and you miss deadlines. And then he agrees with me and says, "Whoops. That
Yeah,
said, many are very happy to let you take on all you are willing to." So, it's kind of a dance because ultimately what you want is people working together where everybody's using their skill set and doing the best they can do at whatever they're doing. But that doesn't, you still need somebody to lead the team. And that's problematical for women sometimes because if you step up and say, I can lead or I know the way we should go, then you're bossy or you're pushy or you're aggressive or
yeah,
so I think that's an interesting balance too, is how do you if you are the leader, how do you lead disparate people who may not be comfortable with the woman being the leader?
Or even like, I think, so this is like a bigger topic, but it's sort of, are you replaceable at your job?
Right.
And a lot of people want to say, oh, I'm irreplaceable. You can't, I do all this. I'm irreplaceable. It also means you can't leave. You can't leave and you can't move up, because if you're only good at, like, if they don't want you to leave that one spot, so it becomes this thing of like, you should always have a feeder system for your leadership. Like, you should always have a feeder system, someone who can take over from you so you can get bigger. So it's like, if you're a one-person shop and you want to hire someone else, like, are you irreplaceable? That's not a good thing. Like, you need someone who can be able to come in and take over your job quite easily. And like, for me, I learned this the hard way, because my mom, like, when she passed away quite suddenly, and it just became this thing of like, she was irreplaceable. So we spent way longer trying to fill the gap than just being like, okay, we've got this. So it's like, so as a family, we're mourning while at the same time trying to, like,
is hard.
restructure. And so it's always one of those, like, everyone's like, oh, I want to be irreplaceable. It's like, that's a bad thing in business sometimes, like that no one can take over from you. Or because at the same time, it's like, you want to be able to grow. And that comes from bringing in a support staff, bringing in, like, training people, like pulling up behind you. Like, these are all the thread that's going through our whole conversation here. But you want to be the one who gets it right and does it right. But it's like, but you also at one point weren't the person that got it right. Like, you're like me, you remember all your failures so painfully.
Oh yes, I can flash back to things that I did 30 years ago that I'm like, wow, that was really stupid. And I mean, minor little things that I'm sure whoever else was there at the time has no memory of at all, and I can replay it in exquisite detail.
I can't sell a style of awards because I remember the first order I got with it, and I screwed that order up so badly, so badly. And it's like, we managed to fix it. Like, it was just, but at the time it was like, took what should have been an easy thing and made it so hard. And it's like, yeah, like, you remember your failures, but so let someone else make that failure, but hopefully not as bad as like what you did at some point. But yeah, it kind of goes into, you want to be the one who people lean on. You want to be the one, you don't want to be the one that says no, or is no fun, or like, isn't part of the team. But at the same time, it's like, you better be building that team for you to leave and go and do something different. And
well, and I think a trap for a lot of women sometimes, I know this is, again, Christine's therapy today, but it's something that I was raised to be a caretaker. I was raised to, you take care of everybody else, you make sure everybody is okay. My parents had issues, so I grew up pretty fast and I took care of them. And so that's my default, is I will take care of it. I will make things better. I will, I'll handle everything. I also grew up in a fairly chaotic childhood. So I'm very like, which is weird, but I like order and I like calmness and I like, I want everything to be controlled, I guess. And those are lovely traits, and they're also bad traits. Because you end up, first of all, you neglect yourself, which is not good, but it also puts you in a position again of, one of the things, Madison, who is another one of the sous chefs at Promo Kitchen with me, sent me an article the other day about how so many women marketers are dropping out of the workforce. And she said, I wonder why this is. And my whole theory with a lot of this is that women have had to do the heavy lifting, the emotional heavy lifting during COVID a lot. And that a lot of women are burning out because they were trying to manage their workplaces and all the stress and fear there, and their families and all the stress and fear there. And, eventually you just go, yeah, that's it. I'm done.
Yeah.
I don't have any more.
Or you just, at a certain point, circumstances made it that you couldn't give more. Like, you had to take care of your kids. Like, there wasn't a backup system for you. Like, there's a podcast called Pop Chat from CBC here, and you find the episode on LuLaRoe. whatever, the leggings thing. It's documentary.
Yeah.
But Emil, she was one of the co-hosts on it, and she just basically broke down like why MLM schemes kind of exist is because we don't give the support system to women to have a career and grow outside of motherhood.
Right.
Like that, it can be a trap in itself. Well, at the same time, like what happened during COVID was like a huge amount of women just exited the workforce because their families needed them. Like I have a friend who worked full time and homeschooled her kid. And it's like, well,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I had enough trouble with COVID and it was just me. I don't even have a pet. I mean, I can't imagine
had a great
people
pandemic.
who had families or were trying to take care of elderly parents but what's sad about that is that there's also pushback if you like, I have a doctor that I've gone to for a number of years, very nice lady, and she recently sent out a letter and said, I am leaving my practice. My parents are getting older. They need care, and I can't do both. And I wouldn't be doing justice to my patients if I was trying to balance both things. And I just had an appointment with her, and I said, I thought that was really, I understand that decision. And she said, I've gotten a lot of pushback on that people were like, how can you, why are you doing this? How can you leave? You've been my doctor for all this time. And it's like, and to me, I was like, well, that's the compassionate and smart thing to do. But people expect that women are going to just have this limitless capacity.
Yeah. Like
to take on everything.
Yeah. Well, to go into the therapy, there's a theory. I don't know if it's therapy, but I've learned about it through therapy. And it's a term that I love. And like my sisters and I use all the time of spoons.
Yes.
And so, yeah. So if anyone doesn't know what this is, it's so you start the day with a certain amount of spoons, and then every task costs a spoon. So having a shower is 1 spoon, eating breakfast 1 spoon, getting to work 1 spoon. But when you're depressed or overwhelmed or burnt out, which is very common right now, some of those tasks start to take more spoons. So you have, a shower takes 3 spoons and a breakfast takes 2 spoons and going to work takes 10 spoons. So you run out of spoons for things. And so my sisters are like, I don't have the spoons for this. Like it's a very common refrain in my family.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of people are at right now, especially is they've run out of spoons. They've run out of the ability to kind of help other people. And that kind of goes into that idea of like your boundaries, like no's not like my favorite thing is no is a complete sentence.
Yes.
You don't have to say anything else. You don't have to excuse yourself. You don't have to say why. You don't have to even, try and help them with something else. No can be a complete sentence. And I think a lot of people tend to think that no is an aggressive word. And it's like, no, it's a complete sentence. It's not aggressive. It's an end stop. And yeah, so it goes into like, do you have the spoons for this? Can you spare the spoons? Or noticing like, are you giving your spoons away to something that isn't giving you spoons back? Like, are you taking care of yourself as much as you're taking care of others? And I think a lot of women are codified to be the caretakers. Like there's this great writer, Anne Helen Peterson, I'm only halfway through this article, but I highly suggest people search her out. But she talks about the holiday magic feel and how that's created by moms, that's created by women. And so that idea of like gifts under the tree and, I don't think my dad ever knew what he gave us for Christmas, but my mom did. Like, cookies are baked, Christmas dinner's made. Like those are female coded activities. And like, that's where it is. So it's like, are you giving spoons back in the same way as something like when it's something like that? And so I think a lot of people are feeling a lot of pressure put on themselves to do things and to be at where they're at, when it's like, we've gone through a global pandemic. Like we've been in like starvation mode of finances, of work, of, unfortunately some people have been in starvation mode. So it's like starvation mode can mean mental as well. And so, are you being fed? Do you have spoons? Are you being taken care of? And I think a lot of people don't always have the time or the wherewithal to say, no, complete sentence and stop.
Yeah. And it's a tough thing to learn to do, especially if what the messages you've been given have been, your value is in what you can do for me.
Yeah.
Your value is in what you can provide to others, not in the fact that you simply exist in the world. And that's something that a lot of women that I've talked to have that issue. That's something I still struggle with because, like I said, I was raised to be a caretaker. My default setting is I will take care of you. And I need to learn not to do that sometimes because the other fun thing about people who are caretakers is if occasionally you find the energy vampire people.
Yeah.
And, they'll suck you dry if you let them. So.
Or the worst part is the credit vampire people where,
Yes.
You'll do all the work and they'll take all the credit. And it's like,
yeah.
No, there was a team around you when that happened. And I'm not hearing any of the teammates' names. And
it's funny because I did tacos with Jay and Jeff yesterday, recorded it. It'll be out in a couple of weeks. And one of the things that I did a couple of times was, they would say, oh, this was a really good thing. And I'd say, oh, well, I can't really take credit for that. It was these people who, advised me or this person created it or whatever. And every time they would say, oh, that's really great that you left. And I was like, well, why? How do you not? If you didn't do it, how do you not give credit where credit is due?
Yeah, but also remember at the beginning, take credit for the work you do yourself. Don't just give it all away. But it is I know I'm I joke at this job that I'm just the pretty face who doesn't mind talking to strangers and that's my job. And, everyone else makes everything happen. And I'm just the pretty face. And, or, I'm just the person who just comes up with the idea and then everyone else has to figure out how it's done.
Right.
Which is for a company that specializes in custom pieces. I am the worst person for okay, physics seems like it could work. And
we can do this. No problem.
You just combine this and combine that, we can do it. Mm-hmm. And so I know that I'm better with a team around me. I know when I have a support system, and it's also are you looking at someone's skill set and being okay, she's a pretty face who can talk to strangers. Let's stick her in the in just production, or let's just stick her in account management. You kind of figure out what people are really good at and where they're fearless or where they can become fearless and just kind of point and shoot them. That's where you get strength from people.
I think it's true. And we are now officially in bonus time, but if you have some time, I do want to go a little bit more because what you brought up, I think is an interesting topic. And I want to delve into it a little bit, which is the whole idea of everybody has to be everything, especially when you're a woman, instead of playing to your strengths. And one of the things that really brought this home to me is one of the jobs that I do is director of marketing and outreach for this trade show called Applicant Getaway. And the person who hired me was very upfront about it. She's like, I need somebody to do the peopling. I'm a tech person. I can make the tech stuff run. I can make the organizational stuff run. I can do all the, I can do the embroidery and all that stuff, but I need somebody to deal with the vendors and organize the classes and do the videos and do all that stuff. And I don't want to be that person because I've tried it and it's not my strength.
Yeah.
And that was, in a weird way, that was such a revelation to me that you could just go, I don't like this. I'm not good at it. I don't want to do it.
You say no and stop.
Yeah, just say no. And she was like, you can do this. And if you want to do it, I'd love to have you do it. And now we work together and it's a really good partnership. But I don't know why that had never really, I was always kind of told that, well, even if you don't like it, you still need to learn how to be good at it. And I'm like, no, I don't. If I don't like it, I don't have to do it.
Yeah, you can learn how to do it because I think being understanding the process, you don't have to you don't have to like doing it or have to do it. You can find someone to do the work for you constantly. This is okay to kind of sort of say to other people, I'm not good at that, but I can help you here.
Right.
And I think again, you get codified, and it's not just women. A lot of people are can be told, oh, you're good at this, and it goes into get stuck in a job, or you're told you're irreplaceable. And it kind of goes into experiment. Like when people join Promo Kitchen, we always tell them, it's like, we're gonna find a place for you.
Right.
Let us get to know you, and we're gonna find somewhere where you're really gonna shine. I think, like, for me, I feel like that's a strong suit for me, is like I can pick up people's talents pretty well and be like, okay, I think they'd fit in this section. I think they'd fit in this section. And it kind of goes into like for work here as well, is like we always tell people, your job can start here. Like I started at Clearmount as an office manager, and I was just going to do it for 3 years. Oh no, not even 3 years, like 1 year, get it on my resume, and then find something else to do. And I'm at 15 years later. And I was an office manager, and then I was like, I really like sales. I started to do that, and then I was like, I really don't like the office manager side. But same with like when my sister came on, she was temporarily going to help us for 3 months because we needed the help, and and then she was like, well, I'll just take over this, and like I'll just take over this, and that became like we found everyone's skill set. Like she's so good at organization and detail, and I'm really good at pretty face talking to strangers.
Peopling.
Peopling. I love the peopling.
Yeah, the peopling makes me laugh, but it's a pretty good description for, and what always makes me laugh most about peopling is I was not good at peopling for a really, really long time. And
skill set.
It is a skill set, and it also is a confidence thing. I was very shy because I didn't have a lot of confidence in myself. And, I think it all circles back to, it's this big ball of intertwined stuff. You get confidence in yourself, you learn you can do things, you learn how to say no, and then you start going for awards, and we've all circled back.
Yeah. It all comes back to shout yourself out and you'll figure it out.
Well, I think it does in a way, though, is that sometimes, I don't ever believe in unearned confidence. I don't believe that you should, the whole fake it till you make it thing. I'm kind of like, I don't really know how I feel about that. But I think what you said about getting typecast a little bit or put in the box of you're good at this thing, when I was growing up, I was told, well, you're not pretty, so you better be smart. And I was like, and I was, and I am, but that kind of put me in a box for a really long time, that I had to be the smart one always.
Isn't it when you find out the damage that like your childhood does to you, you're like, should that still have lasting effects? Oh yeah,
well,
it does.
What's weird about it is stuff gets put in your head and you don't even really realize that it hit as much as it did until somebody says something to you and you're like, well, why do I think that about myself? And then you go back through things, and it's, like I said, therapy.
Yeah. Everyone should do it.
Well, and I think especially there's also value, not that I meant to go to this point, but there's also value in looking at what you were told about yourself, not just when you were growing up, but what messages are you getting now? What are your bosses telling you? What is your partner telling you? What are your friends telling you? Because sometimes people who mean well can put you in boxes that you don't belong in just because they're either trying to protect you or they have fears of their own that they're playing out on your behalf. So there's Christine's therapy minute for today.
Well, it's also, what are you telling yourself too? Like,
yes,
are you telling yourself, oh, I don't want to go for that. Oh, I wouldn't get it anyway. Or like, there is this idea of like, what narrative is being told to us, but what narrative are we regurgitating out as well? Like, what are we?
And how do you talk to yourself too? Because if you are always harsh with yourself or negative and you aren't supporting yourself, then that can make a mess too. So
it goes into like unconscious bias. Like, what are the things that you automatically think about yourself or, some about other people? Like, there's this great podcast called Maintenance Phase, and it's by Audrey Gordon and Michael Hobbs. And Audrey Gordon, she has this blog called Your Fat Friend. And so they talk about sort of the perceptions that fat people get. And so she's like, and they break it down of like, you're not actually fat. The BMI is like genocidal, racist, all sorts of things. And, but what is the things that people will tell her as a fat person and just be like, oh, you're going to die sooner. And she goes, well, actually the stats are that you are. And so it comes into like, measure what you're doing. Like,
right.
Yeah, it is kind of one of those, we are constantly told that we're not good enough, or we're not there yet, or
Yeah.
that's not for you. And that's not a gender specific thing. Women get it a lot more than men, but it's not gender specific entirely. And I think it's just one of those, like, why do I think that way? Why did I say that? Like, I think if you aren't constantly checking yourself and rethinking things, then, read on unconscious bias, read on sort of like sort of the perceptions that we have existing that we didn't know about. And
Well, and figuring out, I think, where you're putting roadblocks in your own way, because sometimes we can be our biggest enemy if we aren't aware of what we're doing to ourselves. So this concludes the therapy minute for today.
This is great. We'll do this next month, same time.
Oh God, this is so funny. Yes, but who's paying who for therapy today? I don't know.
We'll buy each other drinks. That's all we need.
There we go. I love it. Anyway, I do want to, before we close this out, if you want to go check out Kate's company, you can go to clearmount.com and see what they do and all the cool stuff they're putting out. I cannot thank you enough for being here. This was so fun. And we could go for like 5 more hours easily.
I don't even
I'm
think
sure
we touched on like half of the topics that were there.
Yeah, we got through totally one and sort of maybe the second a little. So
more women on panels. That's my key thing. And if you can't find someone, just keep looking, because we're out there. What was the other thing of women in business?
Mentoring and why that's important.
Sign up for promokitchen.com/mentorship, or go to promokitchen.org.com also works. Where we have
promokitchen.org. There you go.
Yeah, so we have a thriving mentorship program. And I always think everyone for this always says, like, you get more out of a mentorship than you put in. So sign up to be a mentor. If you're just like, oh, I'm not a mentor, rethink that, because you might be, but also sign up to be a mentee or encourage other people, because I think one of the things that, like, Promo Kitchen my goal for Promo Kitchen, which Christine, I'm now getting you to help me on, by the way, you've been voluntold, is I want more diversity. And a lot of people think, that means people of color, that means women. No, it also means, like, what is your position at work? Like, are we bringing in marketing people? Are we bringing in operations people? Are we bringing in print people? Like, there's, are we bringing in people who just understand garments and apparel? Like, there's diversity of thought that you may not think is that diverse or is super diverse, and someone wants to learn from you. So sign up to be a mentor from promokitchen.org. Put more women on panels, put more people of color on panels. Like, if your panel looks the same, you've got a bad panel.
Not that we're saying that the people who are currently out there speaking are bad or in any way not useful, but we just think there should be a wider spread of faces. That's all. And genders and sexual orientation and everything. Diversity.
And if you're a woman who's asked to be a panel and you say no because you don't think you can, I'm telling you right now, you can, and you should.
You. See, we are the same person. Our brains are the same, because I talk about mentoring in women in garment decoration all the time. And I talk about every time somebody's looking for panelists or do a webinar or whatever, I'm like, go do it now.
I've got the perfect person for you.
Yes, because, I agree. And everybody has something to teach. You don't maybe you don't know what it is yet, but you know what? Sign up to do that seminar and you'll figure it out damn fast.
Yeah, you'll get it.
You will get it. This has been so fun. I can't thank you enough, Kate. This has really been great. And I'm so excited about Promo Kitchen and all the stuff that's going to happen there. And just lovely. And I'm going to say thank you and goodbye and hit end broadcast in just a minute, because if I don't, we will be here for another 15 minutes. But
this is a whole other Eric thing. So
we could 5 hours later, the waitress is coming by going, "Are you done yet?"
Yeah.
We're like, no.
Well, this has been a pleasure. And if anyone wants to find me, I'm Kate Plummer on Twitter and Clearmount Kate on Instagram. So I'm not great at social media in that I don't post that often, but I'm willing to chat. Or like LinkedIn. LinkedIn's probably the best one. So
yeah, LinkedIn. Or if you want to connect with her, you can always connect with me and I can get hold of her and let her know that you're looking for her. But seriously, I am going to hit end broadcast. I just want to say next week, Aaron and Kylene Montgomery will be here, and they're going to talk about marriage and how to support your partner. So I think that's going to be really interesting. And again, thank you, Kate. This was so great. And I'm seriously hitting end broadcast right now. Here we go. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.